that was important that we really didn't get into is gender. And gender is probably one of the most socially pervasive forces in society today. And we've talked a little bit about that already. What's the first question that people ask when a baby is born?
What sex
is it a boy or a girl? All right? And as we know, oftentimes that distinction comes down to, do they have the right parts? You know? And in order to understand some of the differences around some of these things, I wanted to do some clarifications around some gender-oriented terms that I think are important to hear, to understand, to vary. And it's the whole notion of starting with sex versus gender. Sex is basically a person's biological package. That's what it is. Chromosomes, anatomy, physiology, heredity, genetics, all of that kind of stuff. It's your body. It's your biological package. And gender is more of a social construction. And in order to understand that, we need to break that down a little bit. As you recall, from when we looked at the circles of sexuality, specifically the circle of intimacy, we broke down gender into a number of different components. The first and foremost is core gender. That's that inner sense of gender experience, oftentimes the inner sense of maleness or femaleness. I feel like a male on the inside. I feel like a female on the inside. Or the notion of something else. I feel differently from, or I feel like my sex, my biological package, matches my core gender. And for most people, that's true. All right? That is, their core gender, the inner feelings that they have, matches their biological sex. For some people, it's not. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Second is gender role. That is, prescribed societal and individual roles about how people should behave according to their gender. And oftentimes, that is both in terms of traditional and non-traditional roles. And I believe we spoke a little bit about what some of those things are. What's a traditional role in our society for women? Well, one of those might be, I'm a caretaker or a nurturer. I stay at home. That might be classified as a more traditional role for women. What's a more traditional role for men? Well, I'm the breadwinner. I go out and I work and I bring money home, and that's what I do. So that's kind of what would be classified as a more traditional role. There are lots of non-traditional roles, however. And of course, one of those for women might be that a mom can, or a woman can be a mom and have a career. Is it hard? Yeah, sure. But she can do that. A man can be a stay-at-home husband, or something of that nature. So that might be considered a more non-traditional role. And everything in between and around those variables are also appropriate for understanding gender role experience. Sex. And what do they say? MF. Sure, all the time, occasionally. And so sex might say male-female, right? And that's what we call the binary experience of gender in our society. There's two and only two, right? And so it's, I'm not sure what to do, what to put, how do I frame this? We're going to talk a little bit about what that experience for that particular person might be classified as in a few minutes, right? So sit tight. The last one has to do with gender identity. And this term was originally coined by John Money, and the idea is that has to do with self-labeling. Now, we already talked about two particular labels. What are they? Male, female, right? Him, her, he, she, all that. It's male, female, boy, girl in that experience. So those are traditional gender labels, all right, that are used to refer to the binary. And for, one of the experiences that's sometimes interesting is that people struggle with is transgender folks. Transgender is an umbrella term that would fall under gender identity in this respect, that is often framed as someone who's reassigned their sex or gender that they were labeled as at birth, or whose gender expression is considered non-traditional for their sex. Now remember the differences between the terms sex and gender. Sex is about biological package, gender is about social construction with all those other variables. Basically, transgender is an umbrella term that refers to individuals, or even in some cases communities, who self-identify as non-traditional in their gender expression or in their sex. All right? Now there's a lot more to that than just that broad label. But there are different classifications under the term transgender that we might frame. And one of those is transsexual, F to M, N to F. Transsexuals basically is someone who is born specifically sexed. They have a certain biological package, but their core gender, that inner sense of maleness or femaleness or gender experience, doesn't match their core gender or their biological sex. Their core gender doesn't match their biological sex. Now, for years and years and years, we tried to change their core gender. Guess what? Didn't work. So what we've done instead is try to change their bodies, that is, their sex, to match their gender. And that, of course, we call transitioning, sex reassignment surgery. Now, it's not like somebody's just going to walk into, the doctor's office one day and say, "Hey, it's time for an operation." Right? There's a whole process that an individual has to go through, including, living as someone of the other gender for a certain period of time, working with various licensed or mental health clinicians, hormonal treatments, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just somebody's going to go in and have a procedure. But the idea here is understanding that somebody's sex doesn't match their core gender. That's the premise here.